Ferdinand Marcos Sr., the dictator or the visionary. Few names divide Filipinos more than Ferdinand Marcos Sr. Marcos served as the country's president from 1965 until 1986. During his rule, he declared martial law in 1972, citing threats from communist insurgents and social unrest. Supporters argue that his administration built roads, bridges, hospitals, and infrastructure that modernized the Philippines. Critics, however, point to allegations of corruption, human rights abuses, censorship, and the imprisonment of political opponents during martial law. The debate became even more intense after the 1986 People Power Revolution, which ended his presidency and forced the Marcos family into exile. Decades later, Filipinos still argue whether Marcos was a nation builder or a dictator whose administration damaged democracy. Rodrigo Duterte, the tough leader or human rights concern. When Rodrigo Duterte became president in 2016, he promised one thing above all else: a war against illegal drugs. Many Filipinos supported his tough stance on crime, believing it made communities safer and showed strong leadership. His supporters praised his straightforward speaking style and willingness to challenge traditional political elites. However, critics raised concerns about thousands of deaths linked to anti-drug operations and questioned whether human rights were adequately protected. International organizations and human rights groups closely monitored his administration, while his supporters argued that drastic measures were necessary to combat crime. To this day, Duterte remains one of the most polarizing political figures in Philippine history. Imelda Marcos, fashion icon or symbol of excess. Known worldwide for her enormous shoe collection, Imelda Marcos became one of the most recognizable first ladies in history. Supporters credit her for promoting arts, culture, tourism, and various infrastructure projects. Critics, however, argue that she became a symbol of extravagant spending during a period when many Filipinos faced economic difficulties. Her lifestyle attracted international attention and became closely associated with accusations of corruption against the Marcos administration. Even today, opinions about Imelda Marcos remain sharply divided between admiration and criticism. Benigno Aquino Jr., hero or political rival. Benigno Ninoy Aquino Jr. is widely recognized as a key figure in the fight against the Marcos government. After years in exile, Aquino returned to the Philippines in 1983, despite warnings about threats to his safety. He was assassinated upon arrival at Manila International Airport, an event that shocked the nation and helped fuel the movement that eventually led to the People Power Revolution. Many Filipinos view Ninoy as a martyr who sacrificed his life for democracy. However, some critics argue that political narratives surrounding Aquino have oversimplified complex historical events. His legacy remains an important and often debated part of Philippine history. Joseph Estrada, man of the masses or convicted president. Before entering politics, Joseph Estrada was a popular movie star known for portraying heroes of the common people. This image helped him win the presidency in 1998. Many supporters saw him as a leader who understood the struggles of ordinary Filipinos. However, his presidency became engulfed in corruption allegations, eventually leading to impeachment proceedings and the 2001 EDSA Dos movement. Estrada was later convicted of plunder, although he eventually received executive clemency. For some Filipinos, he remains a champion of the poor. For others, he represents the dangers of celebrity politics. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, skilled politician or controversial president. Gloria Macapagal Arroyo became president after the removal of Joseph Estrada. Her administration was credited with periods of economic growth and stability. However, it was also marked by allegations involving election fraud, corruption, and political controversies. One of the most discussed issues was the Hello Garcia scandal.
Hello Garcia, ma'am. Ano pupunta kayo ni Adalos.
Ma'am. Ay, mamamasyal muna daw ako sa Mindanao. Kaya nga kung ano man ang mga problema natin, tawagan lang ninyo.
Which raised questions about the integrity of the 2004 presidential election. Despite numerous controversies, Arroyo remained one of the most influential political figures in modern Philippine politics. Her supporters highlight economic achievements, while critics focus on governance issues and political scandals. Antonio Trillanes IV. Whistleblower or rebel? Former Navy officer Antonio Trillanes IV became nationally known after participating in military uprisings against the government. In 2003, he was one of the leaders of the Oakwood Mutiny, where a group of junior military officers protested against what they claimed were corruption and problems within the government and the armed forces. Supporters viewed Trillanes as a courageous officer who was willing to risk his career and freedom to expose corruption and push for reforms. Critics, however, argued that his participation in an armed revolt challenged the constitutional chain of command and threatened political stability. Despite being imprisoned, Trillanes successfully ran for the Senate in 2007 while still detained, making his rise in politics one of the most unusual in Philippine history. After receiving amnesty, he became a vocal critic of several administrations and continued to be a controversial figure in Philippine politics. For supporters, he represents courage and accountability. For critics, he represents a man who crossed the line between protest and rebellion. Ronald Bato, Dela Rosa, crime fighter or controversial enforcer? Ronald Bato Dela Rosa rose to national prominence as the chief of the Philippine National Police during the presidency of Rodrigo Duterte. As the public face of the government's campaign against illegal drugs, Dela Rosa became known for his tough image and aggressive approach to law enforcement. Many supporters praised him for taking a strong stance against crime and believed his leadership helped improve peace and order in affected communities. However, the anti-drug campaign also attracted criticism from human rights groups, which raised concerns over deaths linked to anti-drug operations and questions about accountability and due process. After his tenure as police chief, Dela Rosa entered politics and was elected as a senator, where he continued to defend the policies of the Duterte administration. For supporters, Bato Dela Rosa symbolizes discipline and a commitment to public safety. For critics, he remains associated with one of the most debated anti-crime campaigns in Philippine history. Which controversial figure do you think had the biggest impact on Philippine history? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more videos about Philippine history, politics, and culture.